So my next question is about how can we use our faith and spirituality to sort of ground ourselves during these challenging, trying times, and how can those that are not necessarily as inclined or identify with a specific tradition or spiritual practice or faith move forward in improving their well-being? So I'll repeat that if that's long-winded. How can we use our faith and spirituality to ground ourselves during these times, and how can those that might not necessarily identify with a specific faith, spiritual practice, or tradition move forward in improving their well-being and their mental health?
Hmm. Should I go first? We'll just stay in the order. I don't know. Do either of you ladies want to jump in?
We have a pattern. Go ahead, Lisa.
Okay. Well, I'll just say, and just to, there's so much about mindfulness, but I'll say just especially now, it's so clear in what brought me to the Buddhist path was, and mindfulness was that it became very clear to me that external conditions were not sufficient or reliable for any lasting kind of happiness. Who relates to that in any way? You know, you go through life and you start to realize that it's not out there, that external conditions are constantly changing. They're not reliable. We can't put our eggs in that basket. They'll get broken over and over and over again. And so what's been amazing, I think I felt like I was in exile in the desert, actually, until I kind of found this spiritual path that provided me with very clear tools, really time tested, very practical too, not metaphysical, very practical, very grounded. There's nothing about getting into heaven. There's nothing about that. It's that right here, right now is all you need. There is nowhere else that you ever need to go. It's kind of like what Felicia was experiencing with the homeless man. Oh my goodness. Those conditions you would never expect for there to be sacred, sacredness and profound awakening, and yet it's here all the time. So through practice, what we do is we pull back a bit, and we don't look out. How many of you really look outside of yourselves for what you need and for happiness? Be honest. We're so conditioned because of our Western, because it's very American to look outside of ourselves for that which we need. But this Buddhist tradition really allows us to pull back and to drop deeply into what's already here. And the miraculous thing, the very paradoxical thing, is that there's these deep resources, these hidden treasures that are always present. And they're reliable, they're always here, and it's very mysterious. But there's these deep reservoirs of presence that allow us to rest and to find refuge no matter what the external conditions. So the Buddhist path provides refuge independent of external conditions. It doesn't rely on that. Can you imagine the power? It's like a superpower, but it's so natural and practical. And here's the beautiful thing, like Usman was saying, it's available to everyone. It is not exclusive. It's our innate birthright. We just have lost our way. And so the practices allow us like to drop back in where we already are and to realize that we're home all the time. The Buddha's genius was to radically say that it's not any divine place outside of ourselves, that it's all here right now. If we can become present, if we can align with ethical intentions, if we can align with the radical truth of life as it is, these conditions, these COVID conditions are allowing, I don't know if you noticed this, but maybe for all of you, have you noticed that people are starting to pull back and land into a little bit more of wisdom for seeing things as they really are? No longer, staying on that rat race, right? no longer, kind of pulling back and questioning everything. It's a radical time for this. And I think what's beautiful and powerful about my spiritual path and tradition and teaching is that it's like that you can flip the switch and drop in. It's not really that hard. It's not a lot of work. It's more that we need to have the right kind of support and the right kind of understanding to begin to drop into all of this incredible compassion and wisdom and love and gratitude and kindness and equanimity, where we can ride these incredible waves of life with a quality of wisdom and with a radically open heart, that we don't cut off or distance ourselves. So that's what I'll say. I could say so much more about what, to go into detail about what these practices are, but I'll say that it's very easy to drop in. It's really, we're running to stand still. and the beautiful thing is that it's not that far away, it's right here. So thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. I think that's really liberating. I can attest to that as part of my practices. That
it's very un-American.
really, unindividualistic. And I think that's what
it's not individualistic. It really, all of these ways of, these delusional ways of seeing things is that we're all separate. We're more connected than not, in truth. So it really opens everything up. Yeah.
true. These are illusions of the mind, and we make them out to be true for ourselves when they're not.
Yeah.
And I think there's true freedom that lies there. That space of like you share, equanimity and sort of acceptance and awareness. And I think that's where the true freedom lies for ourselves individually. I really believe that. And if we were to emanate that and sort of push for that as a community rather than individually or individualistically, I think it would be even more powerful.
And I'll just say it's this real art of becoming more and more present and aligned in conditions so that you see the truth. And what happens also, just in a mental health, from a mental health perspective, when we become more present and anchored and aligned and grounded and embodied moment to moment, we're less caught up in those habitual patterns of being so caught up with a future that never quite arrives, which causes so much anxiety, right? This is what leads to, when our mind is wandering constantly, anticipating what's next, we really can become prey to anxiety conditions and disorders. And then, of course, if our mind is constantly referring back to what's already been and rehashing the past and not letting go, and constantly caught in that loop of self-judgment, self-criticism, or anger or fear about the past, we're also really caught in that web of depression. These two directions of habitual mental patterns tend to bring us into anxiety or depression, or a combo, a beautiful, perfect combo. So it breaks that spell. Mindfulness breaks that trance and allows us and sets our mind free into what's here. And if we can be here, more likely that right now, just as we're all sitting, it's not that bad. Of course, nothing's perfect, but there's a lot that's okay right now. And this is the present moment is where we can know any true well-being. The research shows this, it backs it up. Well-being doesn't exist anywhere else, but in our senses, anchored and aligned and grounded. So that's a very simple way of kind of talking about the mental health issues and how it can help. How many of you feeling anxious and frightened? So it allows us, it gives us very clear and practical, not metaphysical, very practical, anchored and healthy and sane tools to break those trances and move into more balanced states of mind. I've talked a lot, so I passed the ball. Woo!
That's great insights. And I think, like you said, the gratitude and being present goes hand in hand. When we're grateful for the present rather than reminiscing about the past or worrying or being anxious about the future, I think that's what takes away from our presence and our gratitude. and our grounding. So that's really really valuable.
Well, many are born, but few truly live. And this is where we begin to live. Yeah.
Revan, would you like to share next?
Did I look like I was sort of bursting at the seams, wanting to like? I wanted to defer. I wanted to defer.
I don't think they can hear me.
If Sister Deborah wants to share, feel free to chime in.
Okay. So let's see. I guess I just want to say really quickly that I ran the gamut from that moment that I just left off at with the Carl's Jr. thing. I ran the gamut with like going to all these different, picking up different spiritual practices, and I guess a bit of the what they would call like the spiritual marketplace. So kind of shopping around, and because as Sister Deborah talked about, like that curiosity, I was just so curious. I was so happy to be alive, and after almost not being here. And so that curiosity led me to exploring lots of different paths, different faith traditions, studying different spiritual practices. And I was meditating, this was, I forget, in the early 2000s, like 3 hours a day. And I was getting so self-righteous. It was outrageous how self-righteous I was. I mean, I couldn't be bothered with anything other than a documentary I wasn't going to watch. God forbid I would get a nosebleed. And it was really, I was alienating myself. I mean, it was part of my journey for sure, but it did take me away in a way I don't think was very healthy. But again, it's part of the process. But the reason I'm sharing this was that I went to hear Thich Nhat Hanh during that time. And I just remember sitting in, I believe it was in Pasadena, and someone from the audience said, how do you sit? How do you meditate? And he just very simply replied, you just sit. You just sit and breathe and ground. And the reason I'm saying this is, as far as if you have a faith tradition or if you don't have a faith tradition, I think my love and my heart always leads me to simplifying. I mean, Lisa, you were saying this, like practical steps. And so with that, just for our mental health, for our mental well-being, just grounding, just sitting, like Thich Nhat Hanh said, just sit, or just ground, or just breathe, or maybe tone, or maybe sing, or maybe drum, or maybe go to a Zoom service, or I don't know, go outside for a walk. Look at nature, look at beauty. I mean, there's so many possibilities of ways that we can practice, that we can experience the holy or love, if someone isn't theistic, that it hurts. I mean, there's just so many ways that we can practice, and that can inform certainly our mental health and our mental well-being. And I think it's important to go through those evolutions, though. I think that's the fun aspect, is, maybe going through, because what works for me might not work for someone over here. And that's such a big learning, I believe, is, and what worked for me 10 years ago, I mean, that's how I got off of 4 packs a day. I was a 4-pack a day smoker. I got into Vipassana meditation, but I don't practice Vipassana as much now. I wish I could, but I have found myself really into drumming and really into singing and dance. I love to dance. So those are some of my thoughts as far as, how do we do this? It's whether you're faith, you have a faith background, spiritual, none whatsoever. Just go with what your heart tells you. Go with what your heart tells you. Thanks.
It sounds like you said, evolutions and the revolution of love, right? That beautifully captured it. And that aspect that, as Lisa also echoed, that spiritual is not the same as metaphysical. These are practical daily life insights and things we can practice, integrate as a collective community, and to ground ourselves and to be in a space of presence uh, in community and gratitude. And I think that's really going to go a long way in helping us have more hope, which is always there, and heal ourselves as a collective rather than as a othering each other or saying that we're separate. I think that's really important.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I will add my 2 cents. Um, I'll start out by, I want to pick up on the thing about Thich Nhat Hanh because uh, at one point he was here. I mean, he came many times, but when I was practicing at the Zen Center, somebody there asked me, would I be interested in having Thich Nhat Hanh come and talk to our sisters? And I said, oh my God, that would be fabulous. And so I went to pick him up and I was late as usual. And I remember he came out the door and he walked down the sidewalk and he slowly got into the car. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I think I've just received my teisho, my lesson here, because I knew we were late, but it didn't matter to him because all that mattered was being present in the moment. And of course, I've never forgotten the experience because it was so powerful. And I would just like to add a couple things. I definitely resonate with what both Lisa and Felicia have said. And the issue of mindfulness is so important for people's mental health, no matter what. But the only way to get to mindfulness, and I think John Kabat-Zinn certainly has shown us a way, you have to stop. You have to take time and you have to sit with all that stuff inside, with the turmoil. And at first it can be just daunting, as we all know. I'm sure that people that are on this Zoom, probably almost everybody here meditates, but meditating is a constant practice. And all the years that I've done sitting meditation, I still have to work at getting myself to slow down. But I think of Ken Wilber's clean up, grow up, show up, and grow up. And those 4 points have been very important to me. And the one thing I would add that I want to add to the whole conversation about mindfulness and meditation has to do with the practice, some kind of practice. And in my case, it's the practice of Qigong meditation. And over 2 years ago, my housemate had introduced me to a group from Taiwan that was doing Qigong meditation. And it really is powerful because it's very grounding. And the same thing happens in doing Qigong as what happens in meditation. Here I am in the process of doing Qigong and I'm thinking, well, how long have I done this? And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is just like meditation, only it's physical meditation, and getting so frustrated with myself, because I'm not done. And I'm thinking, what is it? Why do you think you have to be done? What is it that is so important that you think you have to be through with this Qigong practice? And so at this point, I've been doing Qigong practice for over 2 years. And I finally realized a half an hour was not enough. And so I decided to, for my health and my physical well-being, decided to move to an hour of doing Qigong, half an hour in the morning, half an hour in the evening. And I don't always do it perfectly, but it's it is like a hand in the glove with meditation practice. And actually, they complement each other. And I wanted especially to mention the Qigong because as an acupuncturist, the sense of the energy in our bodies is very important. And when we breathe in and we breathe out, for me, that's the present of, for me, is the presence of the Spirit of God, that's within. And so those were just some things I wanted to share and add on to our conversation.
Deborah, I think that's the beautiful part of mindfulness that sort of, as you shared, like it doesn't have to be one thing or the other, and that aspect that the means and the ends are the same. We're not necessarily going anywhere, but we're being more present with ourselves, and being more present with the moment. And I think that aspect of mindfulness, it's different from when we think we have to be on the rat race, as Lisa brought up, and sort of the individualism aspects. And I think that those are the things that stray us apart from being more in the present, and not even being mindful, but being aware, being awake, being present. And I think that's so that's really valuable.
Just
Is
one,
there any,
just
go
one
ahead.
thought. This is teaching me, and it's been referred to. I am not perfect. My shadow, I am amazed. And then I think to myself, it's because you're still alive and you still have more work to do and more discovery. And becoming patient with the reality of who I am instead of getting mad at myself for being me seems to me to be an invaluable practice, a healthy practice.